I was 15 years old and today was the first night of my wedding. I was sitting on a bed of flowers as a bride. My husband was a 25-year-old young man who paid my stepfather a huge amount of money and brought me to his house. Then, after scratching me all night, he said, "Now you are no longer worthy of me, but you are just my mistress." Sitting on the bed of flowers, I felt pricked like thorns. My heart was filled with unseen sorrow. Tears were flowing from my eyes. All my dreams and aspirations were shattered. I, who wanted to study a lot and wanted to do something with my life, had become a bride at the age of 15 and was sitting on someone's bed and watching my dreams bleed. The bride's dress was clinging to me. My father had said so, but I felt this dress was more terrifying than a shroud. Because in this dress, I had turned into a living corpse. It had not been long since I heard footsteps in the room. He was sitting on the bed in front of me, less my husband and more my buyer because he had paid a heavy price for me, that too to my father. My marriage was just a marriage in name. In reality, a deal had been made. My father had taken a huge amount of money, and in the name of marriage, he had handed me over to this person. He had a red look in his eyes and was drinking alcohol from his mouth. He was sitting in front of me, smiling and looking at me, and I was looking away from him and wrapping myself in his arms. Fear had set up camp around me. In the name of marriage, I had only one feeling in my heart, that I had been sold, and I was no less than a prostitute. The business of prostitution is done in a brothel, and my business was done within the four walls of my house. Tears were flowing from my eyes. As soon as this 24-year-old young man had collected my tears with his hands, I asked, "Why are you crying? Nouri, you look so beautiful. Tell me what you are missing." Saying this, he touched my lips with his finger. The redness on my lips had touched his finger. He slowly saw that finger and then touched my request. He said, "I have fulfilled your request too." Saying this, he laughed loudly, and I was left trembling. Then he pulled my hair from my head and threw it away and said, "What is this? You are sitting like a noble wife. Don't I know how you are? If your father has sold me today, he must have sold me to someone else before me too. But look, I got married on your father's orders. That's why I have the right to claim my dues from you." He quickly pulled the string of my blouse, and I was scared and backed away. I curled my toes and tried to hide my chest with my hands. "For God's sake, don't do anything to me." These words came out of my mouth without my knowledge. "Wow, you know how to act, I understand. You want to make me even more uncontrollable like this. Has your father taught you all the tricks to seduce men?" He was laughing and was making fun of me. If it were up to me, I would have gotten up from this bed of flowers and gone and hid in a forest full of thorns, where my eyebrows would have been safer than yours. I tried to back away from him and save myself, but he came forward in a moment and grabbed me. He pulled my face close to his and took a deep breath, and I held my breath due to the smell of alcohol. Laughing, he left his teeth marks on my neck. A scream escaped my throat, and he laughed even more. "You feel pain, Nouri. You are a girl of flesh and blood." Saying this, he scratched my arms. It seemed as if he was not in his own mind. Alcohol had completely alienated him from his senses. With great cruelty, he left his finger marks on my waist. He held me so tightly that the red marks of his fingers had completely emerged on my waist. I started crying and begging for mercy, but why should he have mercy on me? He had paid a high price, and now he had fully deserved to scratch me. Along with trampling on my existence with his teeth, he was busy undressing me, and tears were flowing from my eyes. I was aching like a fish out of water. He had also pulled the string of my gagra, and I had rubbed my eyes. Even while being with my husband, I felt shameless because I knew very well how this relationship was connected. If my husband had not filled my father's mouth with money, he would never have handed me over to this person. My greedy father had offered me the gift of his greed and had not even thought that I was young and innocent. My husband had made me completely helpless and had taken me under his control. He was a young, tall, broad man, and I was a delicate girl with a rice-colored face. How could I protect myself in front of him? He had caught my screams with his lips. My breathing had stopped, and my fluttering body had become lifeless. He was fulfilling his lust, and I had disappeared into myself like a living corpse. I had stopped struggling and had just abandoned myself to the flow of circumstances. The intensity of the pain was consuming my body, and in return, only tears were dripping from my eyes. The night was slowly passing, and that drunken man was crossing every limit to quench his lust. There was no part of my being that had not fallen victim to his lust, that did not have wounds on it. From my wrists to my calves, the marks of his fingers were clear on my being. The marks of his teeth had trampled on my beauty. His drunken breath had destroyed my soul. I was just dying, dying, dying. It seemed that my life would end tonight. The pain had completely overwhelmed me, but there was one who did not show mercy on me, even for a moment. And just like that, the call to prayer for dawn was ringing in my ears. My heart was beating anew. I called out to God with all my heart, and that drunkard left me and retreated. Exhausted by exhaustion, he turned around, and as if to free my being, laid his head on the pillow and closed his eyes. The intoxication had completely taken hold of his mind. He was exhausted from the whole night, so within moments he fell into a deep sleep. While sleeping, he seemed to me like a pile of dirt, extremely unclean and covered in dirt. I got up and limped towards the washroom with great difficulty. When I returned after taking a shower, my heart started crying tears of blood when I saw myself. My wounds were completely flowing. It seemed as if I had not spent time with my husband, but rather an animal had crossed the limit of cruelty and stolen my eyebrows. I sat leaning against the bed, taking a great distance from him. Sleep was far from my eyes. Thinking about the future, I was afraid that my husband was going to do all this to me every night. If only my mother had not suddenly closed her eyes, my stepfather would not have treated me this way. My mother and I were living a very sweet life. When my stepfather walked into our life, I was 9 years old at that time. My mother worked in a garment company. My first father had left us. He had divorced my mother and set up a second home. Despite being divorced, my mother was raising me very well. From morning to evening, she worked in the garment company. After working, she would cook, clean, and teach me. I went to a very good school, and we, both mother and daughter, were completely satisfied with our lives. We were living well with Amma's salary. Then, in the same garment company, my mother met Adnan Sahib. He was Amma's supervisor in the same company, and the love story between him and Amma had begun. He used to love Amma very much, and would say, "How long will you live alone, Shahida? You will need a partner someday, so marry me." At first, Amma refused because of me, saying that she would not marry again. But then Adnan Sahib's love overwhelmed her. Amma told me about his second marriage, and the very next day, she got married again. Adnan Sahib was already married, but his attentions had not stopped. He had his eyes on every woman who came to the garment company, and my mother could not understand this. Adnan Sahib had told Amma that his first wife, "It is not good. That is why he wants to get married again, and he has also fallen in love with Amma." Amma was abused by her first husband. She had never been loved in her life. After my birth, my father started hating her completely. That is why when Amma got Adnan Sahib's love, Amma's eyes were closed, and she did not see the hidden flaw in Adnan Sahib's intentions. But when Adnan Sahib came to our house for the first time, my sixth sense warned me that there was some flaw in his intentions. He was my stepfather, so to speak, but his evil eyes always stuck to my existence because I was also beautiful, like my mother, and was starting to climb the stairs of youth. Feminine beauty was gradually becoming apparent to me, and Adnan Sahib's intentions were changing. He used to stay with his first wife more, but sometimes he would also visit our house, and when he came to our house, those days would become painful for me. As soon as he avoided Amma's eyes, he would turn to me like a whirlwind. They would hover back and forth and try to touch me. I could hardly save myself from their clutches. Sometimes, even in front of Amma, they would forcefully hug me to their chest, make me sit on their legs and try to touch me in a vulgar way, which I could feel completely. Amma thought that he considered me his daughter, but my heart knew that he did not consider me his daughter, but rather came to our house with his dirty intentions. Many years had passed like this, but my mother could not know the truth about her husband. Then my mother suddenly became very ill, and then it came to light that Amma had contracted a very dangerous disease. Suddenly, both her kidneys had stopped working. Actually, Amma used to work in a factory all day and she was not allowed to go to the toilet there, due to which Amma drank very little water. If she had drunk even half a glass of water throughout the day, it would have been a big deal. That is why Amma's kidneys failed. In the beginning, Amma ignored your pain, but then gradually, when Amma's pain increased and it became difficult to work, she was forced to get treatment from a doctor, and it was found out that both her kidneys had been damaged due to not drinking water, and Amma would have to undergo dialysis. We did not have enough money to get Amma dialysis, and I was not that understanding. Adnan Sahib had almost fulfilled his lust. That is why he had nothing to do with Amma's life. He wanted Amma to die somehow and wipe his hands of me. And then, one day, Amma closed her eyes very quietly. Amma's death was a huge shock for me. After my father's departure, Amma had nurtured me and made me capable since I was 15 years old. Amma's funeral took place, and then, after the burial, when Adnan Sahib returned, I started trembling with fear because Amma, the only wall of her and my family, had also left this world. I was heartbroken. I started calling out to God to somehow save my life from this man. While leaving, my mother had made Adnan Sahib my guardian and had said that now I should live my life trusting him. That is why I was forced to look at Adnan Sahib, who had a deep smile on his face and was moving towards me step by step. All the people of the neighborhood had left in regret. Only Adnan Sahib and I were in the house. Before he could raise his hand and straighten me up a bit, the door of the house started ringing. I ran and opened the door. There was a woman standing in front of me, staring at me very badly. Then she pushed me inside, and on seeing her, Adnan Sahib's face changed color. She grabbed Adnan Sahib's collar. "You had arranged a second marriage. Look at me. How foolish I was that on the day your second wife died, I found out that you had remarried. You had been throwing dust in my eyes for I don't know how many years." She was shaking Adnan Sahib, saying bad things about him. Adnan Sahib was gently explaining to her, "Kubra, don't look at me. It's a dead person's house." She was saying, "It's good that she died, otherwise I would have killed her with my own hands." "Who is this girl? Is she your daughter?" Adnan Sahib shook his head in the negative and said, "Kubra, this is my second wife's daughter, whom she has handed over to me." Upon hearing this, the woman rolled her eyes and asked Adnan Sahib, "What do you have to do with her? She was the child of her first husband. Leave her here and come with me. And don't even look at this house in the future." She started pulling Adnan Sahib, but Adnan Sahib forcibly stopped her and said, "Kubra, how can I leave her like this? She is a young girl. How will she live alone? Yes, of course, if she gets married, that's another matter. Adnan Sahib wanted to keep my path open for himself somehow. We are taking her with us." Adnan Sahib had tried to explain to his wife very gently, "What will we do by taking her with us? We have children there, so I will not let you go." He didn't even tell me about the move. "Come with me now. See if he has a relationship with her in a day or two. Send her away and get rid of her. You have big relationships anyway. It's not difficult for you to find a relationship right away. Do you understand?" She had shaken Adnan Sahib. "Yes, I understand." Then Adnan Sahib went with this woman. When he returned the next day, he was not alone. He had brought a boy with him and told him that he was getting her and me married. It was not possible for Adnan Sahib to satisfy his lust through me now, but he could definitely earn some money by selling me. At that time, I did not know that he had planned to get me married in exchange for money. I came to know about this when he got 1 million rupees written in the name of dowry and received it from the boy himself in front of me and sent me away with him. At that time, I came to know that the amount written in dowry was actually written by my father for himself. He was very clever. He had done all the work and, along with sending me away, he had also sold the house that my mother and I had given to her before she died. He had put the money for the house in his pocket and started walking at that very moment. I had reached his house with this boy. The boy belonged to a big family. Sitting in his big car, I got an idea of his luxurious life. He himself seemed to be busy with a bottle of wine the whole way. Then he brought me to the big bungalow, and a maid made me sit in a room decorated with flowers. I don't know how in such a short time he had created an atmosphere like a wedding. But then, when he came to me and fulfilled his desires with my existence, I was shocked, and now I was thinking that I don't know what was going to happen next. I was waiting for the next morning. Maybe he would wake up. If his intoxication had worn off, his attitude towards me would have improved. I was praying in my heart that the morning sun would bring some peace in my life and take away my mother's grief. It was not enough that my father had given me a seed. My mother's house had also been sold, and now this husband was not mine either. Thinking of this, my tears were flowing. I was also very sick with hunger. I had not eaten a single bite since my mother's death. I was sitting like this, clutching my stomach, when around 4 in the afternoon, he opened his eyes and then got up and sat down after a while. Then he started looking at my appearance, and as he remembered every scene of the previous night, a smile came on his face and said that I have never spent such a beautiful night. You are really beautiful, but I cannot tolerate anyone for more than one night. My lust has been satisfied. Now I don't need you. Then why are you sitting here? Go wherever you want. What do I have to do with you? Saying this, he got up and went towards the washroom. As if the sky had fallen on my head, I just sat there in shock. Then when he came out of the washroom, he looked completely clean and pure. I looked at him carefully. He was a very beautiful and handsome young man. His eyes fell on me and he said, "You are still sitting here." I said, "Go wherever you want. There is no connection between me and you." I stammered and said, "I am married to you. You are my husband." After listening to me, he seemed to have concentrated on his thoughts and then said, "Oh, do you remember that Adnan had said that if I want to pretend to get married, I will also get you married? I have taken it, but what is the status of this marriage? I have given 1 million rupees, and this amount is a lot for one night. But Adnan had said that you are a virgin and a beautiful girl. That is why I paid so much money. Adnan works as a supervisor in my company, and on my request he brings me girls. Yesterday he told me about you, so I got involved and brought you here, but now my goal has been achieved. If you are talking about marriage, then I will divorce you." She said this very calmly, picked up a brush and stood in front of the mirror and started doing her hair. I was listening to her with bated breath. Then when she turned around and came to me again, I started crying. "Hey, why are you crying? I have given 1 million rupees. What else does your father need? Go and live a luxurious life, both father and daughter." She did not know that Adnan was my stepfather. While crying, I told her everything about myself truthfully, and also told her that, hearing that I have no place to live now, he remained silent for a while, and then sat in front of me and said, "I can't do anything. All the girls who come to me are needy and make a living by taking money. I thought that you and your father will also make a living with this money. I didn't know that he had cheated you. Well, now I can't keep you here because in a day or two I will get a new girl. So what will you do?" After hearing this, I sat at his feet and started grumbling that you can take whoever you want, but don't throw me out of here. Let this marriage remain as it is. At least I will get a roof over my head to live with dignity. I was in a very bad situation. I knew how wolves are in the outside world. That's why I was willing to live with this drunkard. He kept looking at me for a long time, and then he said, "Okay, you can stay here, but don't interfere in my life." Then he left the house. I was left sitting quietly in this room. The room was given to me, and I thought about limiting my life to this room. But after 2 days, I started suffocating in these walls, and when I came out of the room, I started helping the employees. On the third night, I saw a new girl with my husband. My heart was filled with tears. This was unbearable, but I had beaten my heart. I was restless all night. The next morning when that girl left, I regained my patience. Then the same thing happened again. Then one day, while working, the old employee told me that Madam Sahib and Sahib used to have big fights. They used to fight so much that they would forget their child. That is why Ahsan Sahib started drinking alcohol and would get drunk all the time. Then, I don't know how he got this girly girl. A man named Adnan started bringing girls and giving them to Ahsan Sahib himself. And Ahsan Sahib also stepped into this dirty world. Sahib was not like this from the beginning. The quarrels made him like this. To avoid the quarrels at home, he started ruining their lives by bringing other girls. I was listening to the maid's words with surprise and silence. I understood that the way Ahsan Sahib treated me was because there was a mental war going on inside him. He was fighting within himself, and he made the existence of girls like me a part of this war. I slowly started talking to Ahsan Sahib. He was not as harsh and bad as I had thought him to be on the first night. Gradually, my conversation with him grew. After 6 months, we became so close that he started telling me everything about himself, and I gradually started healing his wounds. After a year, Ahsan Sahib almost stopped drinking alcohol and stopped bringing girls. Whenever he felt lonely, he would come to me and I would happily allow him to come to my room, because this was the right way. I was married to him, and our relationship was lawful. Gradually, he also understood that what he was doing was not only wrong, but also forbidden. He had repented of his sins. He and I had started a good married life. Then, after some time, it was found out that Adnan Sahib's own daughter had run away from home and got married. His son has left him and his wife has also died. Adnan Sahib's entire life was over. He was stumbling from door to door. Perhaps this is the fate of people like him. Today, I am very happy with Ahsan Sahib and am living a beautiful life in a luxurious house. But sometimes I think that if Ahsan Sahib's parents had compromised for the sake of their children and had not fought and gone their separate ways, perhaps Ahsan's life would not have been as bad as it had been.